Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here with one of our new guest hosts, Abraham, and he comes to us from a background in environmental sciences and studies. And I'd love if you shared a little bit more about what you're up to now, and then we'll get into a little bit of your history and what we were like as a kid.
Sounds good. Thank you, Luki, for having me.
So why don't you start with what are you up to now?
Yeah, what am I up to now? So right now, I'm a manager of energy evaluations, modeling and building science with GreenSaver. It's quite a mouthful, I know. Basically, what that means is I'm managing two different teams within GreenSaver. There's the energy modeling and building science team, and then there's the energy evaluations team. So GreenSaver is a not-for-profit, and we've been operating for about 25, almost 30 years now. We mainly deliver low-income programs in Ontario. So what that means is our clients, Enbridge and the IESO, they call, hey, GreenSaver, you know what, we need your help to deliver the low-income programs. And we say, yeah, we'll do it. So the low-income programs targets low-income Ontarians living in a single-family home. And we provide them with energy-efficient measures such as LED light bulbs, Energy Star appliances, fridge, freezers, and also insulation. So we go in to do attic insulation, wall insulation, basement insulation, as well as air sealing in a home where it's inadequate at this time. So if you think about Toronto, a lot of the homes are older, almost 100 years old.
Right.
And if you can imagine, there's zero insulation in the walls. Right. So I think energy used to be very cheap in the past. That's why they built homes without insulation. But now as energy costs rises, we want to have more insulation so that you're not spending as much on your gas furnace heating up the home or your electric baseboards heating up the home. So that's what we do mostly. And now with the new program, the Canada Greener Homes program that just came out, that homeowners are eligible of up to $5,000 in rebates. GreenSaver is also a service organization delivering that to all of Ontario homeowners.
That's great. So I might have to look into that and see if I'm eligible for any of those later on. But before we go into that, I'd love if you can step back and talk to us a little bit about Abraham as a kid. So what were you like growing up? I know you were in kind of Indonesia and Singapore. So what was some of the earlier childhood memories that you have?
I really don't have much of a childhood memory. I think before I was 10 years old and before, I've not much memory at all. That's before when I was in Indonesia, in Jakarta. I do remember playing with marbles, just playing marbles in the school backyard. That's about it. And then in 1998, because of the racial riot that happened in Indonesia, my parents flew me over to Singapore to live with my grandparents. So that's from when I was 10 to 18, that's where I spent my life. So my secondary school was there. Half of my primary school was there. And I remember a little bit more. I really don't have much memory of my childhood. Unfortunately, I'm not sure why. Maybe I do have that trauma that you were talking about that is blocking all my memory.
That's probably a different episode that we'll need to get into. But so maybe we'll pick up from Singapore. So as you're kind of growing up there, and really want to try to find that influence of environmental, because obviously you're doing a whole bunch of stuff in the environmental sciences. Growing up, I mean, in Southeast Asia, it's usually like doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, and it sounds like that you picked the engineering route.
Yes.
But how did that come through? How did engineering come to pass? How did the environmental side of engineering come to pass?
Good question. I remember thinking when I was in high school. So when I was 18, I flew to Canada to basically escape from the army service that I had to do in Singapore.
Okay.
I handed them my PR card. Like, take this. I don't want to do your 2 years national service.
Oh no. Okay.
And then I came to Canada. I went to Columbia International College for my pre-university. And up to that point, I still have no idea what I wanted to do in university. Till I started applying, and I was thinking, okay, I'm good at math, I'm good at science. That sounds like engineering to me. So
Right.
engineering. Now, what kind of engineering? There's so many to choose from, right? And then I was like, I like animals. So I think animals, environmental. That seems like to be the right choice. So that's environment. That's why I ended up with environmental engineering. It was between environmental and chemical engineering
Okay.
that I kind of was deciding on, but I got accepted first from University of Waterloo for environmental engineering. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it, and I enjoyed it. It was great. Totally enjoyed the courses. I personally think that environmental engineering is one of the easiest engineering courses there is
Okay.
in university, just because we're more of a. It's more general. It's not as technical as, say, chemical engineering, say mechanical engineering. It's more general. We're talking about wastewater management, air pollution control. Yes, there's technical aspects of it, especially in terms of groundwater contamination, for example, and the
Okay.
modeling of that. But it's a broad range of things that you can do with environmental engineering, and I totally enjoyed it. The one thing that I regret not doing in my environmental engineering bachelor's degree was building science courses,
Okay.
because one of the professors there is like one of the top professors in building science, and I would have been taught by him, but I at the time did not choose building science as one of my electives, so kind of regret that a little bit.
And why is that, or you just didn't know that he was one of the top folks in the profession?
Yeah, I didn't know he was one of the top folks, so I didn't know that building science was my where I wanted to go at
Mm.
that point of time. Um, yeah, that's the main reason. I didn't know it was what I wanted to do.
Cool. And I guess if you could go back to younger Abraham and plant the seed to explore building sciences, do you think there might have been a way where it would have come up in general conversation or networking events or something like that? Or is it one of those things, no, you had to go through the process in order to find it out?
I remember at that time I was pretty open to learning new things. So definitely, if I were to have talked to somebody in the field, and they would have sparked that interest, I would definitely have looked into it more during that time. But
Okay.
younger Abraham at that time, as an engineer, you don't really get to socialize much. You really just I was more of a book person, so book smart person. So I was just studying. I didn't really talk to anybody. Didn't have many friends. So that's, I think, one of the things I would have. If I could plant the seeds. One of the swipes that we'll be talking about is I would have encouraged the younger me to talk to more people, be more
Right.
open, have informational interviews, have coffee with people.
Yeah, and I think that that's fair with a lot of folks where, I mean, they go to school to study, right? So they want to make sure they have a good GPA and marks and stuff like that, but to the detriment often of some of the relationships, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, yeah, you go out and have parties and stuff like that. You don't want to go to an extreme, but I think for those that are kind of a little bit more bookish, if any of you are listening, go out and make more friends and talk to more people,
Yeah,
copy chats, Zoom chats, virtual chats, whatever it is that you can do or not do right now, but
mm-hmm.
explore I think would be a great interesting area. So
Agree.
I mean I don't know too much about the environmental sciences. So what are some of the most interesting courses that you take, the most challenging and hard courses that you have to take as part of like the environmental part of it?
Yeah, so most challenging and most interesting for me is the groundwater contamination. It's
Okay.
modeling how, say, for example, you have a gas station in a corner, Dundas and Dixie. Um, Once you decommission the gas station, you'll have to do tests to make sure that there's going to be groundwater contamination for sure,
Okay.
right? The gasoline that you are filling into your car every day, there's going to be quite a bit of spills coming out every time you take it off, right? So there's going to be contamination, and we want to model how far that contamination goes to determine, for example, if it's SO, how much is SO liable for? Because
Mm.
they have to clean up the contamination because that's their dirt, basically, right? So that was really interesting because you get to use computer softwares and you can see like the movement of the contamination and the diminish over time. And as well with University of Waterloo, we had co-ops with the university. So for one of my co-op, I was actually doing working with an environmental consulting company, and they were doing basically that. We were doing sampling. So we'll drill few holes in the site and take samples every 4 months and note, okay, if it was, let's say, a foot of gasoline on top of the groundwater, it's not good. But after a while, you'll slowly see it go down.
Right.
So you can kind of model and see, okay, this is diminishing and how long it'll take, and what can we do to clean that up in the meantime.
Cool. So as part of that co-op, were you the one actually like drilling and digging and taking those samples, or was that someone else and you were just more the one analyzing and modeling things?
I was the one. I did not do the drilling. Like we hired external contractors to do the drilling, but I was there to do the logging.
Right.
Okay, I log. Okay, this is silt, sand, mud, for example, in the how deep it was, and also I was the one taking the samples. So we took soil samples and we took groundwater samples. So you have to pump when you drill down. You put a well, and then you can pump out the water, your groundwater, and you take that samples and send it off to the lab, and they'll come back to us saying, okay, there's 50 milligrams of gasoline.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So now you've done a bunch of co-op terms and you're completing your undergrad. And was grad school in the mix before? Like, did you always have a plan to do a master's of something, or how did that process come up?
I did not have a plan to do masters. That was mostly my dad's influence, really.
Okay.
Because he was the one who came to me after my bachelor's. Right? I was just looking for a job, and he came up to me and said, "Ibrahim, you know what? You can be a good engineer. You can make a great product that makes big impact. But if you can't sell it, it'll just be a localized impact. It doesn't go worldwide, right? So it's like, why don't you take a master's in business?" I'm like, that's a great idea. Okay. So I did some research and then found this program in Seattle Pacific University, for social and sustainable business management, which is kind of what I thought it was. I'm not going full board into business. At least there's still the sustainable aspect of business, which I'm interested in, and it's only a 1-year program. So I'm like, let's do that. So I did, and it was amazing experience. We learned the basics of business because this program was designed specifically for people who did not have a bachelor's in business. So we had people coming from a variety of degrees before, humanities, literature, engineering, like me. So we got together, and it was really good. I remember there's the last 3 weeks of our year was a work study tour. We went to India, we went to China to visit businesses and communicate with the business owners that are social businesses, that are sustainable businesses. So it was really interesting.
That's cool. And I guess similar question, like what was the most interesting course from this program, right? Because now you're more on the business side of things and less on the environmental side of things. But how do they kind of bring it together, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember per se the different courses that we had. It was a small cohort that we had. So every term there's projects. Every 4 months there's projects. And that's what I remember most about it, is the projects, not so much the courses that they were teaching us. Because I think they were just teaching us, basic accounting, basic finance, basic marketing. But the projects is what brings it all together. So you basically, in the projects, you get to design concept. So one of the projects that we had was we had to present a business model to panel of judges and try to convince them that this is a business model that will work, right? So of the 4 months we were discussing, we were put together in a group, discussing, gathering ideas, gathering data, and in the last part, presenting that idea,
Mhm.
right? Which is something that we don't have in engineering school. Right?
No.
That's something that, well, for engineering school, is all about the data. Like the presentations in engineering school is very dry.
Mm.
But in business school, they teach you, okay, you got to make it interesting. You have to capture the interest of the audience, right?
Right.
Not so much of engineering, but yeah. So that's what really I can remember most about it. As well, they also provide a career coach
Okay.
during the whole year of degree for the cohort. And this career coach was very instrumental for me learning about informational interviews.
Mm.
He gave us the homework of, okay, you need to at least talk to 10 new people every 4 months.
Okay.
Right. And at first I was like, no way can I do that. I'm scared. Like what Abraham as a student, I don't know anything. What can I bring to the table during this informational interviews? And he was very gracious in that, saying that you can bring a lot. You have time on your hands. You can because you're interested in their industry, you're doing a lot more research. If you think about it, a lot of people that are in the industry for a long time, they mostly focus on what they're doing. They don't have the time to broaden their perspective on doing research on other things. For example, that's something that you can bring value. So what he recommended was share with them when you're doing your research on career goals and all that. Share with them anything interesting, and they'll be very happy to read about it or discuss more about it. So that's one how I break the kind of the fear of informational interviews, of meeting strangers. So it's that I always come in thinking, how can I bring value to them instead of the other way around.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And a lot of students struggle with that because, as you said, like I'm a student, or at least you have a master's. These are sometimes undergrads, and they don't have much to bring. But I think you hit the nail on the head where time, right? So you can go and research and come back what you discovered over the weekend, that sort of thing, and bring that into the relationship, or what you're doing now, because they might be firmly entrenched in what they're doing, but they're not aware of this other area that's kind of pseudo tangential that you've encountered, because you might have a little bit more breadth or whatever. So I think that's a lot of good guidance and advice. So now you're done your master's in business, and you met your dad's wishes, and now you're going to make an international impact because it's not localized anymore. But what happens next? So what was the process to kind of get into your career path from there?
Yeah, one other thing that happened in Seattle was I visited this building called the Bullitt Center, and it's the world's greenest commercial building. And when I step into the building, it doesn't feel like I'm in a inorganic place. It feels like I was in a living, breathing thing, which was super interesting because they met the Living Building Challenge, so that kind of explains the idea there. They're net positive everything, net positive energy, net positive water. So their wastewater, they collect it and then they release it back. They treat it, they release it back clean. And all other things. Like they don't use materials that are hazardous to human or nature. They also get all their materials within 500 kilometers of the area. So that saves the transport carbon costs, right? And so that sparked my interest on building sites. So from there, let's backtrack that building science interest, put it aside first. Because when I graduated from Seattle, my dream career, or at least I thought what my dream career was, I was as an environmental consultant, working for a consulting firm in their sustainability and climate change department, which is exactly what I did with Deloitte. So that, of course, came through informational interviews as well. My career coach back then knew somebody from Deloitte Toronto office, connected me to them, and then I get to know the managers within the climate change and sustainability department in Deloitte. And when they were hiring for a consultant, I applied and I got it through that connection. And then I was like, this is great. I'm in my dream job. I love it. Awesome. But after working there for, let's say, 2, 3, 4 months, I realized this is not really for me. This is not really what I was looking for.
Right.
I kind of have like a romanticized idea of what working as a consultant is, right? And when I started working as a consultant, I feel like that's not really what I want to do. That's just not really me, because we did a lot of talking side of things.
Right.
It's a lot. We did a lot of research. We did a lot of consulting, talking to clients, but it ends there. Like there's not so much the doing part. The implementation part, we leave it to the clients. So I feel like I do want to know what's happening. I do want to
Right.
know what's going on. I want to know the impact of my work, right? At this point, it doesn't feel like there's an impact at all, because they might have taken that away and say, you know what, I don't really like this, so let's not do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
So since it was a 1 year contract, I realized that at the end of the 1 year, I don't really want to stay here. So I started applying for jobs, and I got a volunteer position with Cuso International to work in Tanzania as an environmental advisor. And I loved it because it was very hands-on. I was there in the field, in the chicken farm, the poultry farm, digging holes with the farmer, together with the farmer. They're insane. Like they just keep going. I was like, dig one time, another time I was already out of breath, and they were just they kept going. So, but I helped. I tried to help at least. And basically, why we were digging trenches was because we wanted to make compost out of the chicken manure. So we were figuring out what is the best composition between manure, dry leaves, soil, and water. Right. So just mixing it, and it was successful. Like in the end, we made a good batch of compost, and basically that chicken manure they were gonna throw away. So let's just use it for something useful. Because typically when they raise chicken, they also have like a small farm somewhere, so they can use it interchangeably. But yeah, it was super fun. I enjoyed it, but of course it didn't bring any money. So after the 6 months, I came back to Canada and figured, okay, what do I want to do next? Right now, I know that I don't like to do too much talking. I like to do the action side, right? So after, I want to say, 4 months of really like just looking around and applying for jobs, I got a lead for a green saver position through my now fiance's friend. Like she said, hey, we're looking for somebody in green saver. Can you introduce me to the manager in green saver? So I met the manager. Manager likes me. I came in as a part-time project analyst. That was 4.5 years ago. Yeah, 4.5 years ago.
So now you've been kind of climbing up the ladder and getting more and more responsibilities up to a managerial role. Would you share some of the SWIKE, the stuff I wish I knew earlier along the way? So you've already shared a couple of tidbits, but if you kind of go back to maybe some of the more pivotal decisions that Abraham or young Abraham had to make, what are some of those things that you'd share with him?
Yeah, so the number one was what I've already shared before, the informational interviews. Just go out there, don't be shy with talking to others. Because a lot of the times people do want to share what their experiences are. It's just a matter of somebody, looking for it. It's like the goal is out there. You just need to search for it. And approach them. So even up to this point of time, I still, I'm addicted to LinkedIn, which I don't know if it's a good thing or not, but I'm still like building up my network. Every time I see somebody interesting, be it like a manager, director, or even like somebody who's studying at University of Waterloo and environmental engineering, I just connect with them on LinkedIn, right? And if they accept, great. If they don't accept, move on. And a lot of the times when it's somebody really that I'm interested in what they're doing, I would send them a quick message to saying, hey, you know what? Thank you for connecting. Usually once they say yes to the connection, thank you for connecting with me. Thank you for accepting my invitation to connect. Can we have a virtual coffee chat? Sometimes would love to know more about what you do and see how I can help you. And most of the time they say okay. Most of the time, maybe half the time people say yes, and half the time they just don't reply you. But if you spread your net wide enough, most people you'll get a few back, and that's good enough, right? Um, and there's a lot of meaningful connections that came out of these sort of random um, connection requests. And the way I see it is that I want to be a catalyst. I want to connect people with another person with the same values. And if you put two people together, their impact usually is not, if they can do 1x and 1x, it's not, when you put them together, it's not 2x. It's usually 5 or 10x, right? So that's how I'm seeing things right now. So when I can connect two people with the same values, there's a bigger impact from that.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, and one that I usually drive home for people, because I was probably in the same situation where I was a little bit more shy and introverted as a computer scientist. I didn't like people at all, but I found that once you get past the little bit of a kind of anxiousness and nervousness about connecting with someone, it's not that bad. And I actually find now that I like it, I enjoy it. I'm actually trying to rebrand informational interviews as curiosity conversations, mainly because that informational interviews almost has the thought of a job in the back of your head.
Right.
Whereas if you talk about a curiosity conversation, it's more like, oh, you're a really cool and interesting person. I would love to learn a little bit more. And then that pretense of getting a job is out there. And when that pretense of a job is not there, then it just makes it for a much more fluid and engaging conversation.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and I totally love what you mentioned about kind of the 1 and 1 makes 5 or 10, that sort of thing. Because I do think that when you have a lot of people with like minds and sharing common interests, there's a lot more that can be done than someone on their own. So yeah, and one thing that I kind of took from your story is also a little bit about like doing instead of just kind of learning, in the sense that you had this romanticized version of environmental consulting and whatever, but not ever having done environmental consulting. Like once you got it, you're like, oh, is this it?
Yeah.
Versus if you spent more time maybe digging holes or whatever, then you would realize, oh, this is the stuff that I actually want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that folks can take away is how do they actually find something that they want to do and actually experience, instead of just living off of what they portray in the movies, or what like they have in their head, or what they from books and stuff like that in there. Are there any other key SWIKE or the stuff I was showing you earlier that you want to go back and tell yourself, other than just the networking part? That's a big one, but any other ones that you'd want to note?
Yeah, just a few smaller ones. One is waking up early in the morning.
Okay.
It's what I've been doing this year, 2021. I've been waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
And it's been really great because you get so much alone time in the morning that you have time to, sit down and really think. Because I think, these days we typically tend to shy away from thinking. You know what I mean? Like social media, if you're on the social media after work, you're just scrolling through, you're not thinking anything about yourself. You're just, browsing, passively doing something. But waking up early in the morning allows you that maybe 3-4 hours in the morning just to be able to sit down and I usually go for a walk. And just walking alone is great because you're not on your phone. Well, I guess you can be on your phone, but it's dangerous.
Yeah, probably not at 4 a.m. Not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
Walking outside, yeah.
So you're not on your phone. You're just enjoying the nature, and you're thinking like for half an hour. You're just there thinking to yourself. And what it really helps me to do is just to figure out where I am right now and where I want to be. And it gives time for you to digest kind of, okay, is this really where I want to be right now? And where is it that you want to be? And how do I get there? Like the steps to take to get there. So I think you were the one who mentioned, Luki, about blocking off time every week, 2 hours. I still have, what do you call it?
Non-negotiable time.
Non-negotiable time in my calendar every Sunday. And I think that's crucial for career development, for personal development, just to have that time to think.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And well, that doesn't mean the non-negotiable time has to be at 4 in the morning for those that are listening, because I know some that just scared a lot of people off. I guess, what time do you go to bed if you're waking up at 4 in the morning?
I have no choice but to go to bed at 10 because I'm so tired. I'm dead at 10.
Fair enough. I guess if you woke up at 4, you naturally go to bed earlier because
Yeah.
you just be tired throughout the day. But yeah, and for those that are interested in that advice, you don't have to wake up at 4. You can wake up at 5. You can wake up at 6 or something. But I mean, the world tends to wake up at kind of 8 or 9 your local time, maybe 7, that sort of thing. So even waking up at 6, you probably have a good hour ahead of people. But if you can kind of go all in and wake up at 4, there's just a lot more time that you can spend and develop yourself. And I think that the non-negotiable time, it goes without saying that investment in yourself pays dividends over the long run. And if you can keep on doing that in school or outside of school or however long, then that definitely helps. So thanks so much for sharing some of your experience and your wisdom. What are some of the future aspirations? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to doing, and where might people be able to connect with you if they're interested in learning a little bit more?
Yeah, so my future aspirations right now is to start my own company. Well, actually, I created my own company. So I have an incorporation. So the first step is done. It's just that right now the company is losing money than earning. So there's still a lot of work to be done there. But again, with me waking up earlier in the morning, I can spend my first 3 to 4 hours in the morning to devote towards my company. And then after that, 8 o'clock, start working for Greensaver, 8 to 4. And then usually by 4 o'clock, I'm also dead. I need to take a nap. So waking up at 4, there's some consequences there in between too. So yes, my company is really, I want to focus on being able to make it a better transition towards net zero for homes. So Canada's goal is to transition to net zero new homes by 2030 and existing homes by 2050. And what net zero means is that you are producing as much as you're using, right? Okay. And that starts with tightening up your building envelope, ensuring that there's as little heat loss as possible in the winter. Well, we live in Canada, so we mostly talk about heating here. And I believe that the technology is already here. We are already building to net zero. So I want to accelerate that. Instead of 2030, I want it to be 2026, 2027, that we can get all new homes in Ontario to net zero. And 2040, 2035, even to get to as many existing homes as we can to net zero, including my own, right? So that's my personal aspiration. So if you are interested in learning more, feel free to reach out. I would love to talk to you. I would love to have a curiosity conversation with you.
For sure. So I will put some connection information for LinkedIn and other areas for Abraham in the show notes. And thanks so much for joining us in this conversation. And maybe we'll have you back to talk a little bit more on environment, sustainability, and things in that area, and more on overcoming networking shyness and curiosity conversations. That might be another interesting topic as well. So thanks so much for joining us. And we'll hopefully see you in a future episode.
Thank you, Luki. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.